All right, it is November 18th, and I'd like to call this Townsend Housing Authority meeting. Can I get a roll call, please?
Jess Extenduranian present.
Ladies before gentlemen.
Well, no.
Sorry, I was slow.
Thank you both. Natalie, I see you are here. Could you announce yourself? Maybe. Okay. Looks like Natalie might be having some trouble, but we do have 3 of us here, so we will get started. Okay. This meeting is being recorded. And I'd like to go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
and to the republic for which it stands,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
and justice for all. Sorry, my leg was on ice, so I could not stand.
No problem. Thank you, Lori. Okay, I'd like to go to 1.5. Any additions or deletions for today? I don't have any. If anybody else does. No. Okay. 1.6. State representative report.
Well, this month I had attended 2 meetings. Both meetings had to do with ARPA funding for the state. With that, I guess there's more to be revealed. They did have a vote last week, last Thursday, I think it was, at 11:15 at night, to approve some specialty. Townsend was approved for 2 projects. They were approved, and this is all pending the final legislation, Jen, just so you know. There was $50,000 from ARPA funding for the bandstand for Townsend, earmarked for that, and there was $100,000 that may be increased for the Squanicook Rail Trail. So once I think they ratified some of the budget items and put it back in. I think they're voting on it sometime this week, but I know that those 2 areas are definitely going to be getting some additional fundings from ARPA.
Great.
As far as anything else, I did attend a meeting that I wanted to find out more about our the commuter rail and the zoning for the commuter rail. I have nothing really to report other than I'm gathering more information. Madam Chair, I'll probably ask for an agenda item going forward once I have the information that I'm kind of looking for. But it looks like we might be able to look for possibilities with the state in regards to assisting us to help increase some affordable housing that's close to the commuter rail. There's one in Air and there's one in Shirley. So we might want to be able to look into that. And that's about it as far as the things that I've done.
Great, thank you. Did they have it? They didn't have really any additional information on when some of that guidance would come out. I think that's what we were looking for last time, right?
Yeah. As usual with a lot of state meetings, and I don't mean to be trite about it, but there is a lot of conversation and little decisions. So nothing was decided, but there was a lot of conversation revolving around being able to, I expressed my not concerns, but Townsend, the way it's situated, is just such in a pocket of non-transportation that we need to be able to somehow find a way to open up, to be able to either get more people coming from metropolitan Boston area out to here, to provide much easier. I mean, as it stands now, if somebody wanted to use a commuter rail here, they'd have to drive into Shirley or drive into Air, leave the car in, you know, this is country out here, so it's technically leave it in the grass and go into the city and hope that your car is here when you come back. So we're looking for a little more, maybe a park and ride somewhere in Townsend, I think would be a good idea. And would the park and ride have the ability to have like some sort of public transportation, whether it be senior transportation? It would be nice to have seniors being able to go into Boston, so to drive them to the commuter rail, that kind of stuff. And or anybody that's in the downtown district area to be able to park your car down, in a safer area and then be able to get to the commuter rail.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay. Since we have Jen and Andrew here, we're going to get going on number 2 here, which is the HPP update. I think I sent everyone around the draft goals and strategies. So I hope you receive that. And Jen, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, sounds good. And I hope I don't get kicked out again. Sometimes we have trouble with our internet here, but I'm on a different Wi-Fi, so hopefully that will be okay. And Andrew, you may have to step in if I get kicked out. Okay, so let me just share my screen. Can you make me a co-host?
Hartley, can you take care of that for us?
Oh, yes. One moment, please.
Thanks.
Okay, hold on.
Should be good.
Try to find you here. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Thank you, Hartley.
You're very welcome.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks. So let me share my other desktop here. Okay, so first I just wanted to talk a little bit about the project schedule and where we are. And I'm hoping, I'll make this a little bigger. Is that a good size for everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we are here at this meeting with you all to review the draft goals and strategy outline, as Courtney mentioned. And then the work that we'll do over the coming weeks, Andrew and I, is to compile the full draft. And so we'll take the results of our discussion today, and you may want me to remove some of those strategies. You may want to add some. Whatever we result in today, we're going to write it up as the goals and strategies will become a chapter in part of that draft report that you got a few months back. And the chapter will essentially be the goals and strategies chapter, and it will fill in the outline with more description about each of the strategies, as well as some mapping that we'll add in. And so we'll do that over the next few weeks and submit that to you the Friday before your next meeting, which we have down as the 16th of December. And then at that meeting, we'd like to review your thoughts on the draft. So if you could be prepared that after we submit that on the 10th to spend some time reading the new chapter. It'll be chapter 2, goals and strategies. And you may just want to hold some time over the weekend or something like that. I mean, I don't want to micromanage your schedule. I just want to make sure that there's some reading involved, and so that you can be prepared to talk about what you think of it at our meeting on the 16th. And if you could be prepared, you can always send me comments ahead of time. That's always appreciated, because then I kind of know what to expect at the meeting. But it's fine too if you just want to talk at the meeting, if you don't, if it's too short of a time period to formulate comments ahead. And then we'll go ahead and revise the draft based on your comments on the 16th, and we'll submit it by January 6th. And then we don't have a date for this, but the idea is that the planning board and select board, who are the two entities that actually need to approve it locally, would meet sometime in January, sometime after we submit, jointly, and we could then give a public presentation about the draft plan. And they may have questions, they may have revisions ready at that meeting or not. They may want a little time to review longer and get revisions. We've seen it go many different ways. And so as soon as they're ready with their comments, we'll be ready to revise the document based on their comments. And then we can, depending on the extent of the comments, we can usually turn that around in about a week to 2 weeks would be the most. And it just depends if it involves more research or anything else that might take a little time, then we may need more on the 2 weekend than the 1 weekend. But if it's sort of minor revisions, we can usually do that pretty quickly. And then it would be ready to submit for DHCD. So any questions on the timeline and the next steps?
I don't have a question, but Madam Chair, I might want to suggest maybe Jody interface with Beth to be able to maybe preliminarily schedule something for January, just so we have that on the books.
Yeah, that would be good. I know once we get into December, it's every man for themselves. So yes, we will work on that.
Okay.
Yeah, and let us know what the possibilities are, because we do have a bunch of stuff going on already, evenings in January, so I just want to make sure we can be there.
Okay.
Jen, if you have a few preferred ones, if you could send us that too, and we can try to see if that actually slots into any of the ones that that we can do.
Okay, and this would be a special meeting, so we're not trying to fit it into their regular schedule. Is that the idea? Okay.
Yeah, we'll do just like a joint meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you for being flexible. Sometimes our clients say, oh no, the planning board and select board never can meet together for some reason. So thank you for being willing to do that. Okay. So, oh shoot, I didn't mean to stop the share. I meant to change this, what you guys are looking at. Let me do that again. Okay, so go to, okay. So this next thing we don't really need to go over. We just wanted to give you this as our process document. This is just our notes essentially of what we heard from you at our joint meeting, the joint meeting that you had on October 14th. And that's where we really developed this list from, is from that conversation. And we just wanted to give you, I know you have your own minutes, but we just wanted to give you kind of our own takeaways from that meeting. And if you feel like we got something wrong or misunderstood, just let us know in an email on the side. We can fix anything. But what I'd really prefer to focus on is what we did with that, and focus in on this draft goals and strategies. And so let me just orient you to the way we do this. I typically do include the DHCD regulations just so people can see what, as part of a housing production, do have some state requirements that we have to meet when we're writing the goals as well as the strategies. And so in this blue box, it essentially it's an excerpt from the comp permit regulations, the section on housing production plans. And so for goals, we're required to have goals that talk about that the town wants a mix of housing types consistent with local and regional needs, feasible within the housing market. We don't have to use all these exact words, but just so you know the gist. And then we also need a numerical goal for housing production that's tied specifically to those annual incremental production goals or biannual, the 0.5% of total units and the 1%. And so you'll see that we do have a production goal in here, and that's why we do that. Sometimes towns say, well, why are you, we're never going to be able to do it, it's too high a bar and all of this. And our job isn't to judge whether or not you'll meet this requirement. It's more that that's what you're aiming for. And so a goal, there's nothing binding about a goal. In fact, this whole plan is not binding, just so you know. But it's really stating that you're going to be actively striving. It's not saying you will reach that goal, but so just to preempt, sometimes people say that, can you soften this a little bit? And we can always wordsmith a little bit, but essentially this is what we need to say in this plan. Okay, and then the next, and we'll go back to those, but the next section is really about the 5-year strategies. So the goals section.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you just make it a little bigger?
Oh yeah, of course. So the goals section includes 5 goals. There's the production goal, a goal about changing local needs. And this is really a goal about, types of households, as well as types of housing in need, or needed rather. It talks about, we usually have something around location and strategic locations. And for each community, it's very different. But for Townsend, we really emphasize your environmental constraints, as well as, being strategic in other ways too, around where, and I don't know if we said this, but we usually say something about, village centers and things like that. So we can actually add something about that if you want us to. And then the fourth one is about, something we talked about with you last time was calling out older residents, veterans, and other vulnerable populations. And so we talk about that in goal 4. And then goal 5 is mostly focused on capacity. And we talk about both local and regional coordination as well as outreach. And we can go over the details of those in a moment. The next piece is about the 5-year strategies. And so this is DHCD's requirements listed here. So we need to identify zoning districts or geographic areas where you would propose to modify current zoning regulations to specifically create SHI eligible housing. It doesn't only have to be SHI eligible housing, but we do need to talk about that as the primary requirement for DHCD. The second one is the identification of specific sites which the town will encourage 40B permit applications. Permit applications. The third one is the characteristics. So we kind of scatter that throughout. These don't become, individual strategies. You'll see that we've mixed all these things in different ways throughout the strategies. And then the fourth one is looking at municipally owned parcels and are there opportunities for encouraging housing development. And then the last is participation in regional collaboration. So for example, I think we talked about the rehab program, and there may be other things too we talked about. And then we have these 3, so the way we do it, and each consultant does this a little differently, but just the framework we provide for those strategies, we actually don't provide the framework of the goals. So sometimes you'll see a goal and then a bunch of strategies that address that goal, and then another goal and a bunch of strategies. But what I find is that strategies can address multiple goals. They don't just usually address one goal. And so we don't typically organize our plans by goal, strategy, but I do like to create what I find handy when I'm creating the strategies to make sure that I'm actually covering all the goals. I create this little matrix that I'll carry over into the document. A lot of clients feel like it's a handy kind of a cheat sheet, just a reference where they can quickly see all the strategies and don't have to look through the whole narrative to find something. But that's what this is. This will be essentially become whatever. Sorry, I keep flipping and I don't mean to. Hold on, I'm just going to enable scrolling so that doesn't happen anymore. There we go. So what you'll see in the plan is we'll have a kind of a master matrix like this with the strategies we end up with and what goals we think they address. But this is just for our discussion tonight. So the way we break this down is into 3 categories: planning, policies, and zoning, local initiatives and programs, and then capacity, education, and coordination. And I think the first one is probably pretty evident: planning, policies, programs. It could be study this or that, or adopt a policy around X, Y, or Z, like LIP guidelines, or change zoning or other regulations. And so that's all in the first section. The second section is what can you do with town-owned land and money and people to some extent. Where do you focus your energies? And so this is where town-owned land would come into play, or other local initiatives that you may, and we can get down to that because sometimes we talk about programs that you can implement with town funds, but it doesn't have to do with regulatory or other planning studies or policies. And then the last is capacity, education, coordination, and that's probably pretty self-explanatory too. It means like what kind of funding sources do you have, and what kind of people, boards, commissions, town employees are working toward housing goals. And then we also add in coordination and education piece, which is more around coordinating with other entities, could be regional entities, could be entities within your community. And then we talk about educating the community members. And I know that's work that you've been doing, but just to keep doing that is usually called for in pretty much all communities. So with that as the framework and sort of giving you the overview, let me just pause there and ask if there's any questions about how we laid this out or what it includes or the way we categorize things before we get into the details. Does the silence mean that it generally makes sense?
I was waiting for anybody to comment. Jen, I think this is the way you laid it out is indeed much more organized than we threw the information at you earlier. I will say that. I do believe that your matrix is spot on. That's exactly what we're looking for as far as organizing the information here. What else do you think you need from us in this particular area? Do you think you need anything more from us?
No, I mean, that it's good just to hear the confirmation about the way we've organized it. But I guess if we are ready to kind of dive into the details, what I'd like to walk away from today is any changes. Are there goals that you think should be shifted or completely changed in the way we, what we focused on? Is there anything missing in the goals that you think we neglected to include that's important from your perspectives? And then for the strategies, similar questions. Are there strategies that you don't want to see in there for whatever reason? And we can talk about those reasons. They could be political, they could be, not realistic, whatever it is. Are there strategies that we neglected to include that you were hoping to see? And then the only thing I would ask that we don't focus on is wordsmithing that doesn't really change the essence of it. If you have and I don't mind people wordsmithing my work, but if you could just do that on the side, I think it would save us a little time. But it's more, the discussion I'm hoping for is more substantive. Like, are we emphasizing, and you can say things like, well, you should emphasize this or that more, and we don't have to figure out how to say it tonight, but we can sort of just take notes about, okay, we'll work that in somehow. And I guess what I'd be inclined to do is just start with the goals. Make sure that we have the essence of the goals right, and then go into the strategies through each of those three categories.
Can I ask one question, Jen, before we jump in? I believe from our last meeting, I believe it was on the goals that you had recommended we kind of keep, I believe it was to around 5 goals, just based on the being maybe overly ambitious. Does that also kind of go for the strategies? Like, if we end up with a list that is, as long as it is today, do you feel like that is being kind of overly ambitious for what we've been able to achieve and what we hope to achieve in the future?
It may be, and that's certainly something I want you to think about in terms of your own capacity. It is 5 years, so that's really not that long. And, with that in mind, I guess I'd want to strike up, my advice would be to strike a balance between being, aspirational and confident about the fact that you can achieve things over the next 5 years. So don't limit yourselves too much, but I don't want to give you an overwhelming list that there's no way you could, reasonably accomplish. But the other thing I want to say, and I should have said this in the beginning, is that I don't view these 19 suggestions as a roadmap so much as I view it as, or a blueprint maybe is a better metaphor to use. I view it more as a menu of options that you probably don't need to do everything. But as you go through, the 5 years, and part of this will be an action plan showing the sequencing to focus on. But as you go through the next 5 years, you may try things that don't get traction for whatever reason. Some of them could be market-driven issues. Others could be political issues. You never know. And you end up kind of dropping them off your priority list in that way. So I want to have enough there for you to choose from as well. So if one thing that seems like a priority today ends up being a dead end for some reason, you still have a bunch of other stuff you can work out.
That's helpful.
I'm not totally answering your question straightforward, just because it kind of depends.
Yeah, no, that is helpful though. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it was very, very political. What I was thinking in that section, because I really like this matrix, is maybe look at the strategies as how many goals those strategies actually hit, and do it top down, what hits the most goals would be the ones that we probably need for our strategies, and then go from there. How does that sound, Courtney?
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. I mean, obviously we want to focus our energy to making the biggest, bang for our buck in terms of time and energy. So I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that too, Chaz. Okay, so why don't we start here with the goals? So we've got these 5 goals, and I guess one question is are there any that stick out to you as not being appropriate, or things that bothered you when you read them? And I can scroll down to anyone. I don't want to make you dizzy by scrolling back and forth too much. So just tell me if you want me to scroll down.
I actually like them all. You've captured exactly what we had talked about in our last meeting.
Yeah, okay. Is there anything that you think I missed from me? It doesn't necessarily have to be something we talked about. It could be something that, in retrospect, you feel like, oh, we didn't talk about this, but it's still important.
I was kind of hoping that we would get maybe some more information. I don't know if Lori had it, but some housing information from the master plan that's being written right now. To hopefully, I am one to have all of the town's documents be able to work from one document to the other and all match up. And I was hoping that we would be able to do that with the housing chapter of the master plan.
Chaz, and well, that some of it went over this evening with the planning board, but I haven't been able to. I gave them a lot of information that they were to incorporate. I haven't been able to review all of that, but I will and get back to you. But it was more what I gave them from the housing authority perspective and where we've been.
Okay.
So I don't think there's anything in there now, but if I see something different, I'll let you know.
Okay. And were you able to see these goals? What were your thoughts on these goals?
I like everything that they're doing.
Yeah, good. Because
yeah. And I like the way, Karen kind of did the same thing before. It's like, although we were more reactionary before versus proactive, there's just so much we could do. But I think having as many topics covered and options that we could do, we know that we're not going to hit them all, and we know what it's like to have a project and have it just fall and not get anywhere, not get the tread that you thought that it was going to get. So understanding all that, I'm happy with what they're doing.
Okay. Well, we also have just so Jen understands how at least some of our philosophy works, is that having such a punch list like this, when opportunities do come up, we tend to match whatever we have on the punch list. Sometimes we don't know what opportunities are going to arise until they arise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Okay, any thoughts from anyone else on these other goals here? Maybe we should spend a minute looking at the number 3, which is the minimize environmental impacts of new development by promoting new housing options in strategic locations and through reuse opportunities. And we gave, some background around the environmental constraints. There's obviously more in the other chapter that looks at development constraints, but we brought some of that into this goal. And we talked about, strategic areas that have minimal environmental constraints and those that provide redevelopment opportunities. What we didn't talk about, and I know in this, and I put this, I'll scroll down for a minute. I put one of the X's in red because I started to feel uneasy about if this encourage mixed-use development in commercial areas and investigate 40R in the 3 villages. They all fall into, some level, and they're all different levels, and we actually, with this map that we made, that's a little different from last map, which just showed the pink area all combined, and you couldn't tell the environmental constraints, but this one you can. And all 3 village areas fall within some level of constrained land, which I'm not saying that it's necessarily not a good idea to focus on development in those areas. But I just wanted to point out that it may seem like an inconsistency with the goal around focus, and I'll just go back up to that goal, with focusing development in areas that have minimal environmental constraints. We did add in the thing about provide redevelopment opportunities, and I was thinking maybe that could play into the opportunity in the villages, but I didn't maybe explicitly say that. So I guess I'm wondering if we should change this at all to accommodate that vision of the villages and potential there for housing or mixed-use development. And if so, how would you want to change this?
I mean, I think it'd be really good to include that stuff in, only because there are things that you see that aren't being used to its highest and best use in some of those areas. So I think the redevelopment of those is key to getting some of this up and running. I think in West Townsend just recently one of the shops was available, right? But it's something like that, being able to make that into housing would be really great, and kind of encouraging that. So I think even if we're partially constrained, we have to try to redevelop some of those areas.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, and I can add something in specifically about the village areas. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So are you saying that? I guess I'm not seeing what your concern is, Jen, in regards to the strategy to the goal.
Well, I made a blanket statement here. Essentially, what this goal is saying is that you should focus into this white area.
Right.
And then but later we have a strategy that focuses on the villages which are not in the white area.
All 3 are outside of that. I get you. Okay.
Yeah. So I just wanted to be kind of honest about what we're really saying. And I think Courtney picked up on, we do have this phrase, provide redevelopment opportunities, and probably the village areas that you're thinking of, promoting development either through 40R or other regulatory mechanisms, they probably are already developed, right? You're not looking to take virgin land in those villages and develop them. Is that fair to say?
Yep, that is fair to say.
So maybe I could tie in like a specific reference to, and do you call them village centers? I just want to make sure I'm getting the lingo right. Or what do you say?
What do you think, Laurie?
Well, we have the harbor, which sometimes I hear it as Harbor Village, but I've not heard Town Center referred to as a village.
Okay.
Or West Townsend as a village.
So maybe I shouldn't refer to them all together. Maybe I should call them out separately. I could say, we just labeled it harbor, but is Harbor Village the more proper?
No, they'll know harbor.
Harbor?
Yeah.
Should I say
they'll know that better in
commercial
Townsend
area
Center
or
and West Townsend. That's our 3 sections, I think.
Yeah.
So I can just mention these 3, and would you say they're commercial areas? Is that fair to say?
Well, the harbor is more historic.
Yeah. I would agree that would be the hardest one to, for any redevelopment, really.
Yeah.
Well, do you actually want to include it on here?
The historic?
Yeah, the harbor.
I wouldn't really want to earmark that for any kind of development or anything,
No.
but that's a personal thing on me because I live in the harbor, so.
Well, I don't think you can. There isn't, it's dense. It's one of the denser areas of town.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what could be developed there. And plus you've
Well-
got the water.
Okay.
But you also have a corporation that's there as well that might have some opportunities further on down the road.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I mean but I don't think it's anything that might be expanded. I mean, unless they sold out and we could do some housing developments there, but it would still be subject to our septic systems,
Right.
and you still got the water. I think everything, developmental wise in the whole area has its parameters. Whether you might have dreams that are, pie in the sky, but there's going to be natural parameters because of water and septic that are
Right.
going to limit how far you can go without
So-
even wanting to eliminate or not do it. It's just not going to be able to happen.
Yeah. And the idea with what we marked here was looking at zoning changes to encourage redevelopment. And that doesn't sound like what you're looking at for Harbor anyway. If there is opportunity there, it's not because you've done a zoning change, it's because a corporation left and maybe they want to sell the property.
Right.
So I guess I'm inclined to take this off of this. This was noted, it doesn't say that, I don't think, on this, but in our minds, this was about regulatory changes. And so I'm thinking we should take Harbor off and just leave Town Center and West Townsend.
I'm good
I
with
would
that.
Okay, and then what that means, going back to goal 3, is that I can say provide redevelopment opportunities, particularly in Town Center and West Townsend.
Okay.
Okay, and then when we get down to that strategy, I'll actually take, because we did mention, yeah, we said in 3 villages, so I'll fix that as well.
Okay.
Okay, great. And so then I guess I'm inclined to move to the strategies themselves, unless you have other thoughts on these goals.
I'm good with those.
Okay. All right, great.
Sorry, I was just going to mention that when we were working on that map, those 3 locations are also historic districts, local historic districts. I think that was what the boundaries are that are shown on that map, just for convenience. But I wonder if, looking at at least the street network, like in West Townsend, if it's a little bit bigger than that little boundary that we had from the historic district, or if that's definitely what you would consider to be West Town. For example, I don't know. It's just a thought. I mean, looking at the map again.
Well, Natalie, you can speak to that, Miss West Townsend.
And I don't know if you can see this well enough to, I'm going to zoom in. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. There we go. Okay, is that big enough to understand where those boundaries are looking at, where are falling?
So Andrew, that outline is just what is the historic district in West Townsend, you're saying then?
Yeah, exactly. That was the way to put it on the map easily, just for today. I didn't know if there was, if it was generally considered to be bigger than that, like if we're talking about development, because I mean, obviously the historic district has constraints too, so that just crossed my mind as I was looking at the map here.
Yeah, but that's also where the old Bates corrugated was. That building that was for sale, that was one of the properties that we had for the 43D.
Mm-hmm.
That's in that area on Main Street.
Okay.
And that's got the acreage there. But exactly where that building is, in a close proximity, there is not much historic anything. In fact, there's a new professional building, newer professional building across the street diagonally from where that manufacturing company was. So there are properties that could be developed there.
Yeah.
Do you think it would stretch, I guess, across 119 all the way from this West Townsend to, even beyond kind of town center a bit, like like a kind of little like corridor along 119?
Like coming out of, you mean, Courtney, like from Scales Lane out more west?
Well, I guess I was thinking more from like Sterilite from, from the town center, to the town center, and then all the way to West Townsend, like the whole little strip, like where, Townsend Ford's on the front and all that, that whole little
Yeah.
zone
Yeah.
between.
Well, it's kind of like, there's a lot of our Main Street area that they don't like the word spot zoning, but it's mixed use.
Right.
And it never went full commercial because of individuals who wanted to keep their homes on Main Street. And so that's why you see there's a few single family homes across from Central Plaza. And then they've got, which is a great walking area. If that could ever be developed, but I don't know what will happen there yet.
We're not saying that they can't keep homes there, right? We're just kind of identifying an area that could have like an overlay district or an overlay thing eventually to promote additional development, right?
Yeah. And that's not to say that someday they all might feel the same way that, hey, I'm on Main Street, this should be commercial. But you had some old timers who used to speak up against it at town meeting. And so that did not pass.
Mhm.
So it wasn't just either a planning board or board of selectmen decision-making kind of thing. These were actually discussed at town meeting.
Yep.
So, I mean, Corey, you were saying like maybe look at this whole corridor and connect these as a potential overlay?
Yeah, that's I was just wondering that just because that, it kind of does feel like, along there we have some opportunities. It's kind of all the way from the kind of big dark building you can see in the right hand side of down from town center right along 119. Sorry, if you go even down
there.
Yeah, right there.
there all the way over to West Townsend,
Mhm. Would anybody be opposed to doing that? To showing that on the map? I mean, obviously it has to go, just because we show it on the map doesn't mean it's going to happen, but
Right,
Yeah.
right.
talk about it.
But
I
it is
would-
an area of focus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it could also be like some of these overlay districts are not a one size fit all. They could have sub-districts where, the heart of town center is treated differently than, this corridor, which looks like it has a bunch of little buildings in here versus, areas with kind of larger existing buildings. So these overlays don't have to be just this uniform zoning that goes over everything. It can really be, there can be a lot of nuances to it. Okay, well, I'm not hearing any objections to that idea, at least in terms of including it in this, for this purpose. So that sounds like a good plan to me. Okay, great. So let me take this map down. All right, so let's get into some of these details of these strategies. So the planning policies and zoning one has 9 different ideas here. So there's consider amendments to the ADU provisions. And this is really coming more from us than you guys, but we think you should consider removing the affordability requirements and looking at a by right option. And then number 1 and 2 kind of go together, but we kept them a little, I mean, to be honest, I probably should have put number 2 down in education, but I paired it here with accessory dwelling because that's when Andrew and I were thinking of it. But this is really to promote the fact that once you make these changes, you can start to promote that. ADU bylaws across the state are not used very much, partially because a lot of them are written with lots of caveats and exceptions, and the other reason is because a lot of homeowners don't even know they can do it. they don't even know where to look or think to ask. So so let me just go through all of these, and then we can go back and you can tell me like which ones are non-starters, which ones do you think are the most important things to focus on. The next one here, number 3, is working with the Board of Health to investigate alternative and innovative or shared wastewater treatment systems, potentially looking at regulatory changes to your local subsurface sewage disposal regs, and focusing on areas that do have the minimal environmental constraints. So not across town, but really looking more at the white area of the community on the map that we keep referring to here. And I don't know if you've already looked at that, if you think it's a non-starter. We did not talk to anyone at the Board of Health. If you want us to, we can kind of do a little due diligence there and just ask what they think of this idea and if there's any opportunities that they see. The fourth one is considering amendments, zoning amendments to create more flexibility in those areas with minimal environmental constraints. And this is something we did talk about, such as reducing the lot size or frontage requirements, or allowing more flexible development with other housing types, meaning alternatives to single family. And so that would again be focused in that white area, the area with the minimal constraints. Developing guidelines for LIP projects. And we do have a model. There are probably lots of models out there, but one of our clients recently, the town of Medfield, has a model that seems like it's working really well for them. 6, investigate, sometimes we say consider amendments, other times we say something stronger. You'll see that we opted for consider, and this one is even like a little bit weaker than consider. It's just investigate it. So you can also talk to me about if you want us to use stronger language on any of these or weaker language on any of these. But this one we said investigate the effectiveness of the density bonus that you already have as part of the open space bylaws, and encourage affordable units. Like, how well is that working? Are people actually taking you up on those density bonuses, and are you getting, and we just don't know the answer to that. And so that's why we didn't say consider amending it. We said investigate it and just see how well it's working. And then you can consider refinements.
Yeah.
7 is, this one we already talked about. 8 is consider zoning amendments to allow for development of affordable housing on non-conforming lots. So if you have lots that are less than the minimum lot size in certain districts and they can meet Title V and water supply requirements, they could be developed, but only if they're an affordable deed restricted unit. And we're working with a community, the town of Medway, that's had this on the books for a long time, and it's actually not being used. And we're actually doing a study for them as part of the HPP process to try to figure out, how many of these lots are there even out there in the town? Are the eligibility requirements too strict? Are they eliminating too many possibilities? And that's actually what we're finding. So there's you have to look very carefully at how you craft it. But the other idea that we're working with Medway on, and it's too soon for you guys, but if you did have this kind of, we call it an infill bylaw. If you did adopt an infill bylaw and there were a number of properties that would comply, or be eligible, the housing trust could actually go and buy those properties. They'll be less than a property that's buildable, right? They'll be, so it's kind of a, not that it's free, but it's, reduced value because it's not otherwise buildable. And what homeowner is going to want to build an affordable unit? They don't even know how to do it. Do a lottery and all of that. So the trust could then buy some of these lots, a few a year, whatever, and put out an RFP, and maybe a group like Habitat for Humanity or a group like that could come and develop those lots to, provide permanently affordable starter homes. So that's down the road, but first you'd need the infill bylaw to kind of just put the regulatory piece in place.
Right.
The other idea here is about the inclusionary zoning bylaw, and I know we talked a little bit about this at the meeting, but You know, we would say that this would really require a study because there's lots of different ways to structure these, and you really want to make sure that it works with your market. You're not trying to discourage housing development if you make them so strict that, you know, and don't have density bonuses and other things like that. You can actually make the development infeasible. And so you just want to look carefully at your own market and craft it in a way that it will work for you, because the idea is to get more, not to stop housing development, but to get more affordable units in those developments. Okay, so let me stop. Those are the 9 regulatory strategy ideas I came up with, and I can't fit them all on the screen, so I'm just going to reduce it a teeny bit so you can see them all at the same time. Okay. So what do you guys think? Are there, I guess my first question is, are there any that you really like and you want to make sure we keep in here?
There's a few. I mean, but I see these as what it will be the Housing Authority's roadmap for the next 5 years on what we're going to be zeroing in on. Courtney, that's what I'm kind of looking at here.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jen and I chatted a little bit after the meeting last time too about, just making sure that we're including things that are more friendly to developers too, and people coming in. And I think all of these are really getting at that, which I think is helpful.
Mm-hmm. So Jen, are you looking for, yes, we like all 9, or do you think that we need to
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, which ones do you really like? And then are there any that you feel either for any reason really that you want to either reconsider how we worded it or to just strike it all together?
Well, the ones that have to deal with zoning, is there a way that we can combine those?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the order, we could actually have a subcategory under policy, planning, and zoning and put all the zoning ones together and then talk about them together. That's a good idea.
Because that number 1 will give us a punch list of what we need. And then when we do work with the zoning department, we'll be able, or the zoning board, we would be able to, if there's something coming up that's on zoning, we might be able to speak to that.
Right. Yeah, that's a great idea.
The accessory dwelling one is, unfortunately, that's not really working the way that we kind of wanted it to work. And again, that would be a zoning thing.
Yeah.
Board of Health, you wanted to...
The second one about the education, I actually think we should just move that down to the education category. I think I misplaced it.
Okay, I'm good with that. The Board of Health, I think that we need to start regionally. We do work with a regional Board of Health. And I feel comfortable with you reaching out to them, and I'd like to hear what you find from the regional Board of Health first before we go to our local Board of Health.
Okay.
So that we can zero our focus. So when we do approach the local Board of Health, we have all of that information.
Okay. Can you give us, or can someone give us a contact there and maybe make an introduction by email?
Mm-hmm.
Great, that would be great.
Jody, can you do that for us? Yes, okay.
Chaz, you mean Rick Metcalf, right? You want me to reach out to Rick? Nishoba?
No,
Are you looking for
yes,
Nishoba?
Nishoba, yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, Nishoba first, and then we can go to the local board afterwards.
Okay.
It's part of the, well, I guess Jody and anybody that, I think the broader picture is we need to show that we are reaching out on a collaborative basis to other towns. So I believe that if we go with the Nishoba board, because that is made up of all different communities, get their insights and info, and then we can go locally and kind of compare and contrast the two.
Okay. Great.
Again, the 4 is zoning on develop guidelines for lit projects. That is a big one right there. I mean, it's a very simple sentence with very, very little words, but boy, does that mean a lot. Do we need to be a little more specific with that, or?
Yeah, when I write it up, I can kind of go through and give you examples of what you would want to include. And then I also, for all the strategies that I have a resource, I'll share a link to the resource for more information. So I'll share, like I said, I like the Medfield one a lot there, and there are probably other models, but I can share that link so you can see how they do it. They look at not just guidelines for the developments themselves and design and target households and things like that, but they also have a protocol to follow, like a process where developers need to go through a public process before they even submit a pre-application, so before it's a real project. And it's a pretty interesting process that's resulted in very little NIMBYism for by the time it gets to the zoning board, there's no controversy anymore because the process was done so well. So I'll share that just as an example, and we can write up basically a description of what we mean by that and what you could consider including.
Yeah, because there's a couple. There's one that was out on the Cape, and Courtney, I don't know, I can't remember the specifics on it, but it was an old drive-in theater that was on the beach. And then they worked it so that it's a development within itself, but it was affordable housing, and it was all it was almost like a cluster neighborhood kind of thing.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Cool.
So I think projects that we can earmark, Courtney, like that, I think would be.
Yeah.
Okay.
This affordable housing conditions, I like that too, because that looks like we could probably maybe work that into a DLTA grant going forward at some point.
Okay, yep.
Encourage mixed use development. I mean, that again is another very broad statement, but boy, does that mean a lot too. I think, you know, having that work with us, working more with the zoning, I think in 5 years, what can we do in 5 years? I mean, I know what I want to do in 5 years, but I know that realistically what we can do is probably just plan and hope to implement within 5 years. So, and I do like the inclusionary zoning bylaw. I love your ideas on that, Jen, and I believe that we really do need to move forward with something like that as well.
Okay, great.
A lot of this is so gonna plan on.
What did you think of
planning
number
and
8?
Zoning.
Oh, I'm sorry, Laura.
No, I'm sorry. I just wanted to chime in on the planning and zoning having a great deal on any of this getting accomplished, obviously, because they have to be on board.
Yeah.
Yep.
And this is going to give us an opportunity to say, this is on our punch list. We want to have a meeting. This is the information that we have. Can you come to our meeting? Blah, blah, blah.
Lori, do you see any of these ideas as being particularly controversial among the planning board members?
We kind of have a new, kind of more new blood on planning board now. And I think a little bit, younger homeowners in town who want to become active and raise their families here. So I think they're going to have more futuristic look, than what we've had on planning for a while. Planning most of the time has been reactionary versus proactive, and it's been more about, as it turns out, a lot of what happens with town hall and recommendations and stuff like that ends up delaying projects, even simple projects. And becomes very time consuming and costly. And that has not changed. Speaking from personal experience. So that's a problem.
Okay. All right.
And then Jen, if you your comment about number 8.
Yeah.
I believe that really needs to be, I mean, the housing authority can do so much with that, but I agree. There's a lot of hammerhead lots. There's a lot of flag lots. There's a lot of non-conforming that I believe that if we can somehow come up with some kind of strategic plan for that, we can work through some of those issues.
Yeah.
I like that one too. I mean, it gives us an opportunity to, like I said, use things that can otherwise not be used and use it for affordable. So I like that one too.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so let's move down to the local initiatives and programs, and there's only a few of these. So we did put this in, investigate the feasibility of promoting smaller development on the 19-acre town site adjacent to Timberley Park. And I wanted to just check in, because I think we tried to map this, right, Andrew? And
Yeah,
actually, it's not on this one.
it is on that map. It's in purple. It's a little farther down, I believe, and slightly to the
Oh,
right.
it's this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess we wanted to double check that this was the parcel you were talking about. Can you tell from this?
It was the only town-owned parcel that was 19 acres. That's how we found it.
You're doing it by a process of deduction. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant, Andrew.
Is this the one that we were talking about last time that that Kevin said maybe to relook at? Is that the one?
Yeah. Yes.
And that there is that one little piece that's connecting it to South Row Road there.
Mm-hmm.
Lori, do you have any ideas on this plot of land here? Is it town owned? I don't remember seeing it.
It was listed in our data in the assessor's database, right, Andrew? As town owned. Yeah.
Whatever layer that Delaney had there, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have it with me, but the Town Properties Committee made a report of all the possibilities of vacant land that we could use.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that report, Vicki has it.
Okay.
So Jody could get it for sure. Or Jody knows because she's worked with us on it too.
Do we have that? I actually can't remember.
So I sent you the after the last meeting, that town owned properties list.
Okay.
And we eliminated a lot of things, calling it should go to conservation, other things to the Townsend Housing Trust. Remember that, Chaz?
Yes, I do.
That was that last meeting, and we have not had one since then.
Okay. Because that's piqued my interest again.
Yeah, well, as I recall at the last meeting, there was basically a discussion along the lines of like that somebody had reopened the possibility of doing that, of developing this parcel, but it had been taken off that list at some point, and then there was
I don't know if
putting it back
Kevin
on.
has had any time, but there were 2 parcels from our last meeting that Kevin was going to walk.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, oh my God. Well, that was right after the last meeting. Jody would know the date of that. So I would say that I can try to reach out to Kevin and see if he's done that. And if he has anything to report back to Town Properties, if we should meet again before this gets finalized, kind of thing.
Okay.
It may not happen this next month, but
Right.
certainly before any decisions are made on the final plan. Okay?
Yep.
Jody, can you make a note of that for me, please? Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll just write it up I mean, all we're saying now is investigate the feasibility. So it's not, saying to definitely build there or anything like that. And I think that's what you're in the process of doing. So the way we word it is probably appropriate given where we are right now, or where you all are. And then the next one, create a process to maintain, and you may have this already with the Town Properties Committee, but we said create a process to maintain an updated inventory of tax title properties and promote housing development on tax title land in strategic areas. I mean, we can reword this to essentially say continue what you're doing rather than make it sound like you're not doing that. But tell me how you'd like us to, it is an important asset to look at your town properties on a regular basis.
Mhm.
We did map what we had, and I don't know, Andrew, maybe we actually got this from the report Jody sent us. No, I'm not remembering.
Yeah, it was from that PDF.
Yeah.
And then we put it on the map.
So we mapped all the existing tax title properties that are, and I forget, Andrew, how did we decide to do this? Did we decide to do it with a minimum lot size, or is this actually all of them?
I think it's all of them. Like the numbers are really big and on the smaller ones, so they just look like numbers.
Yes.
But yeah, I think we just put them all on there for now. And the thing that I realized might be more beneficial if we're going to include such a map or whatever would be to eliminate the ones that are listed as not being developable or whatever, which some of those larger ones were listed in that table once I looked at it more carefully.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Did this one also include the town-owned that were transferred to the trust? Is that what this is also included?
Good question. I remember that list.
Yeah, I think I
there's-
included the vacant.
Yeah,
And
you
then I
did.
got them the tax title.
Yeah.
From the treasurer collector. And then I'm trying to remember how we had that list laid out. I didn't bother sending like water and, town hall, obviously.
I'm just wondering because I know there's like one list on Haynes and Wallace Hill that's not on this map. That's what.
Yeah, let me just take a peek and see what I sent. Hold on.
Yeah, and we should, regardless
I
of
remember getting that that list, but I think this was just a list on the document that says tax title outstanding balance.
so this probably doesn't include them then.
I don't think it does. Yeah.
So
okay.
I think we should include and do like a different color though, because that's important to have it really well done.
And we can refine these a little bit
Yeah. Okay.
based on the ones that are listed as undeveloped, like number 25, which does look promising, obviously, because it's in the white area, but it's listed in your table as being undevelopable.
But we don't know why it's undevelopable.
It just says undevelopable residential land. That's all it's said in there. So,
Well, it has no frontage. Maybe is that why?
Yeah, it looks like.
Yeah, that doesn't look, there's like English Chaz, that doesn't look like there was
So, I wouldn't actually take that one off because if you can get frontage, like if you could buy this lot right here, I have no idea what that lot is. It might be someone's grandmother's house. I don't know, but maybe you could still get, like I would take it off if they're environmentally constrained significantly, but not frontage. I feel like you could potentially solve.
well, and that's another question too about the newer map, because I thought it would be wiser to separate out some of the different environmental constraints because they obviously have different requirements. So that might be something to look at if we find other large ones that are in one or the other area, if they're not maybe in all the areas, or just something to think about.
Okay, well, we'll look at that and we'll add the trust-owned properties. But I guess getting back to my question on number 8, is there a different way that I should word this?
I think that you should say continue on refining the process to maintain or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Because there is a process. We do have town properties. We now have the Affordable Housing Trust that's on board with us too. So I kind of want to make it look like we are actively pursuing that.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and then I just kept this in. This was in the old plan, but it's not tied to a specific location. I mean, it could be, we could tie it into consider one of either the trust-owned properties or the tax title properties to develop veterans housing. I feel like I feel like this was a little too loose, this strategy. It's like investigate the feasibility, but I don't talk about a site or anything like that.
I mean, we did accomplish that. We investigated and we developed a plan and we proposed it and it got shot down. So we, instead of developing veterans housing, I agree with you. I think we should earmark the those areas that you just talked about, and instead of saying veterans housing, we should put multi-use or
Okay.
not just narrow it down to a populace, but definitely put it into that we are. What do you think, Courtney?
I guess I'm wondering if you're tying it back to your number 4 goal, right? So you're marking it to support those older adult residents, veterans, and other vulnerable populations, right? It's like the 3.
Correct.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and we talked about this a little bit, I think, last time.
Number 10.
Yeah.
Well, I also want to add, yes, we did talk about it last time, but it's also something that the planning board at one point, in one of the planning board meetings that I had from our last meeting, they did express the same concern, is that affordable housing is getting dropped off and we need to do something to preserve it.
Okay. And then the last one is just continuing to do the rehab program, essentially.
Yep.
Okay.
How about to continue and investigate new, because that may go into a new CBDG if we
Okay.
decide to go into that as well.
Okay. And then the last ones were about capacity education coordination. So we have, I need to show that you're collaborating regionally, and I know you're already doing this, but well, to some extent, although this one is specifically to promote community understanding of housing needs. I thought if you work together rather than trying to just do education of the public, around housing needs, if you work together with, regionally through the MRPC or other neighboring towns or both, you could kind of collaborate and do things. So I don't know if you think that's a good idea. I was trying to think of some regional ideas.
Yep, no, I like that.
Okay. I did put the CPA in here. I know we talked about trying that. One thing that might be helpful when I write up the CPA one is if I don't know if it's your assessor, your treasurer, or someone else could get me an estimate of what CPA could potentially generate at different surcharge levels, and then what it would be on the average single-family tax bill. So what we just did with another community is they gave us the number, assuming that one of the exemptions was adopted that knocks $100,000 off residential property value. And then they ran the number at just the current tax revenue. They didn't do a projection. They just ran it as if it was already adopted this year and what it would have generated this year. And they did a 1%, 2%, and 3% surcharge scenario with that one exemption. We didn't do the other exemptions for multiple reasons, and we can talk about what would make sense. But just to put some numbers in, so, in this town, I think this one was the town of Medfield. Their average single-family tax bill would generate about $105 a year towards CPA for each household, at the average single-family tax bill. Right. So it's actually a compelling number, because in a town like Medfield, that's not that much. They're already paying like almost $13,000 in taxes a year. What's another $100 in that community? And I don't know if that would be a good argument as well for your community. The numbers, I'm sure, will be different. So some communities find it helpful if we run that analysis and just put the numbers in, and it helps to, kind of give a bit more education about what the actual impact could potentially be. So what is your gut reaction to that?
I understand for investigative purposes, but some people will think that we're trying to increase the taxes.
Mhm.
So I'm a bit hesitant personally.
So I'm fine with leaving that part out. It's just an idea. What I can do is instead write it up just more generally about the benefits of CPA and how it can fund multiple different types of categories, including CPA, and it's the primary source for housing trusts across the state. And I can keep it to points like that, more about the benefits and not so much the financial analysis.
Yeah, and considering adopting says to me that there's one things that we're just gonna kind of investigate and look
Yeah.
at as opposed to, okay. 'Cause I don't want people to think that we're trying to raise their taxes.
Yeah. Okay, great. And then I just said to continue funding the land use coordinator position. I know you're starting to fund that now again.
Well, it's already funded, and we're actually in the process of interviewing.
Oh, great. Okay.
So
And then I have create a regular predictable funding source for the housing trust and a 5-year action plan. And I listed CPA, inclusionary zoning payments, and the ARPA funds. And I don't know if you want me to list anything else. They're just examples.
right. Nope, I like that.
And then we talked about this too, develop and maintain relationships with local and regional developers to pursue collaborative initiatives for housing production. Okay, is there anything strategy-wise that you think we're missing in any of the categories? Yeah.
I feel like I'm talking too much, but oh well, you guys are used to it anyway. There is, I know when I was helping put together the Affordable Housing Trust, there were opportunities that I was looking into through DHCD where they kept on saying, well, once you have the trust developed, then give me a call back, or then call us here and then call us there. So I really would like to see something in here that shows that we are trying to work with DHCD.
Yep. Do you know the nature of what they wanted you to call them about? Was it to?
Well, one of it was, I believe it was seed money to help us to fund the housing trust, and then how to help us plan on how we're gonna, or how they're going to operate, I guess, what they can do, what they can't do.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that's great. I know that I didn't know about the seed money, so I'll have to look into that. If you have any, Chaz, if you have any emails or anything about that, let me know, because I'd like to get more information about the seed money. But I know that the Mass Housing Partnership also provides technical support to housing trusts.
Yeah.
And so I can mention that as well.
Correct. I just don't want people to think we're recreating the wheel here, that we are working with the agencies that have the expertise.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, great. Well, that's, I mean, unless people have other comments, that's everything that I was hoping to cover tonight. Does anybody want to go back to any of the pages that we reviewed?
No, I'm good. I think you guys are doing a wonderful job.
Great.
I would say I was a little worried about all the strategies, but after going over them, they all sound so great. How can you do
I know you guys didn't eliminate any.
Oh.
Okay, so in the draft plan, we'll write up the goals and strategy chapter, but what I usually do with the action plan is I give you I have an action plan that's essentially a matrix, and it lists all the strategies, and then it has these cells for which year you'd accomplish them in, and then it has a column for what entity in town is primarily responsible to accomplish that. Is it the planning board? Is it the housing authority board? Is it the select board? You know, and then I have another column for supporting entities to just show what other entities would be supporting in that effort. And, you know, some of them may be the land use planner, others may be, you know, the housing trust, support, you know, or whatever. So there's showing collaboration. And what I usually do is when we write up this chapter of goals and strategies, I really focus on explaining the strategies, but I don't fill out that whole action plan yet, because what I like to do is really do that collaboratively with you all to figure out what sequencing do you want to see in this plan and what responsible entities do you think would be the most appropriate. And so that's the nature of our meeting next time, is not just getting your comments on the work that we'll submit to you the week before, but also just going through an exercise similar in detail to what we did tonight, but focused on this action plan and the sequencing and the responsible entities. So you can kind of think about that a little when you're reading it as well.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, great.
All right, great. Well, I don't know if you have other stuff on the agenda. Do you need me and Andrew for anything else?
I think you are all set, and we'll confirm our next meeting time and get you that when we make sure we've got on the calendar. So
Okay, good, great,
Right.
good to see you all.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thanks, Andrew.
Thanks. Have a good night.
You too.
okay. Do you guys have any thoughts before we go on?
I'm very pleased with that.
Yeah, I know it's really nice. It's exciting. Okay. All right, so we're going to go on to number 3 under the work session. 3.1, the master plan housing chapter review. I think we kind of got a little update from that earlier, Lori. So if you let us know if you have anything to add, but otherwise we can kind of keep going. All right. The next piece was 3.2, the MBTA community zoning, and I think we also got a little update from you, Chaz, on that piece. So we'll leave it up here for next time, but unless you have anything else to add on that one.
Nope, I'm hoping to have some more information next time we meet, actually.
Okay. 3.3, the town webpage discussion. I have to say we do seem to keep tabling this one, and that might be partly my fault on that. So let's leave it on again for now, and maybe Jody, you can have a little discussion about it at some point on how to get access. And I think that was the big thing for me, is just trying to get access to them.
Yeah, I did, Courtney, just so you know, I did, sneak into Jody's office and we did have a conversation about it.
Oh, good.
I would think that, Jody already has authorization for that. I just think that, for her to clean up links and all of that kind of stuff, I think Jody is you're just waiting for the green light on that, right?
Yeah, it's up to you as far as posting stuff. I think it's more, we keep leaving that on there. Maybe you guys could check out the webpage as it is now and then give me some feedback via email or at the next meeting and say, hey, get rid of this, add this, or what have you. We could do that.
Okay. And then we're, as far as the meeting, the agendas and the minutes, we're pretty much up to date, aren't we, with all of that on there?
I have to double check. The last time I tried to upload them, I was under the impression they uploaded, but then when I went back to check, they were nowhere to be found. So let me double check. It's been on my list. Have I done it? No, honestly.
Okay.
But it's on my list to check on.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll be in on Monday too, Jody, so I can
Crack the whip. Okay.
well, I'll be I never do that, do I? So maybe I can pop down and we'll have a discussion about that.
Okay.
All right.
All right, 3.4 bills payable. And I believe we discussed Chaz was going to go down and take a look at this and improve that. But if anybody has any comments on what Jody sent over, otherwise.
Yeah, I just need to sign the warrant, right, Jody?
Yeah, just the I'm sorry, just the cover page for all
page,
of,
yeah.
essentially it's just for golds and the invoices. Like I said, Terry is we've got a couple that have gone out, but they have no signatures, and just not
Okay.
a fan of that.
All right. Well, I tell you what, why don't you remind me on Monday and then I can do it right then and there.
Yeah, or like I said, I'll put them upstairs, whatever works. No big deal.
Okay. All right.
And I've been just kind of logging their invoices as they come into, and they seem to be appropriate at the level that they're at right now, just in case you're wondering when you go and sign that one off. Okay. 3.5 correspondence and clerk's announcements. And Jody, I think you sent us over a couple of items, right?
It was a zoning board of appeals, legal notice. And then I think the budget, and then this special town meeting memo. So nothing really crazy, just kind of FYIs.
Okay.
Did we get a mandatory referral for the for this legal notice? Do you know? No, we probably
I mean,
didn't.
knowing Beth, I'm gonna say probably. I don't know if we would have gotten it before, because our last few meetings have kind of been, you know, the HPP heavy. So I don't know if it was sent, and I mean, I can go back through my emails. She usually emails them if you want me to send it out.
I mean, it's really nothing to do with the housing authority. I was just wondering if we needed to comment on it, that we have no comment.
I don't think so.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
And then the special town meeting is on December 14th at 7 o'clock in Memorial Hall. And we didn't have any warrant articles on this one, so good for us, I guess.
Maybe.
Yeah. Right. And then, okay, the ledgers are there, so do we need to have those ledgers signed, Jody?
No, that's more FYI from accounting.
Gotcha, okay.
Okay. And then 3.6 was approving the meeting minutes from August 19th, 2021.
Well, I had
Right.
no issues with that.
I didn't either.
So, Madam Chair, I'll make a motion if you want.
Yes, please.
I move that we approve the minutes for August 19th, 2021.
Can I get a second?
Natalie, Lori?
All right, can you hear me?
Yep, there we can.
Yep.
Okay, I second. Sorry. I second the
problem.
motion.
Thank you.
Okay.
Roll call vote, please.
Natalie Cole, yes?
Chad Sexton Duranian, yes?
Okay. And Courtney Barella, yes. We may have lost Larry, but so
That's okay.
thank you.
Yes, sorry, yes.
Great.
Got it.
Okay, and then our next meeting we just talked about is on the 16th at 7, and we will check in with Hartley or TCAM on that and send that out.
Okay, I will be out of town that day. Sorry, I'm out that week on vacation. Just let
Okay.
you know.
Okay.
All right.
Lori, will you be available that day?
Uh-oh. Where'd you go?
Sorry, sorry, what was the date?
It is December 16th.
Yeah, I'll be out of town.
Yes. Great.
Hey, Courtney, this is Hartley. Just notify TCAM before you notify me, so they'll notify me.
We'll do.
Thank you.
Jody will do, really. Thank you, Jody.
Oh, she always does a great job. So
Yes.
Natalie, if you could send in your
Mhm.
comments in regards to what is sent out so that we have your comments on there, I'd appreciate it.
Okay,
from
sure, I
Wilson.
will certainly do that when you
Okay.
something, yep,
Thank
thank
you.
you. You're welcome.
Okay.
Mhm.
I think we, does anybody have any other comments?
I move that we adjourn.
I second the motion.
Great. Roll call, please.
Natalie Call, yes.
Laura Schifrin, yes.
Sexton Duranian, yes.
And Courtney Roy, yes. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank
you.
you. Have a great
Jody, I'll
day.
see you Monday.
Have a nice Thanksgiving, everybody.
You too.